I need you to pretend to love me for 3 days and spend one night under my roof. In return, I'll erase every cent of your debt. Rain beat against the windows of her quiet art studio in downtown Chicago. The smell of turpentine lingered in the air, but she hadn't painted in weeks. Bills piled up near the door, unopened. Her fingers trembled as she held the eviction notice that had been taped to the gallery entrance that morning. At 28, Evelyn had invested everything, savings, heart, into her dream. After losing her mother 2 years earlier and cutting ties with a father who never forgave her for choosing art over accounting, Evelyn had no one left to call. The bank refused another extension. The landlord was done being patient, and her last commissioned piece had been cancelled when her only client vanished to Europe. With a new muse. She was out of time. That's when he walked in. The front door creaked open and a tall man stepped inside, soaked from the downpour, yet oddly composed. The streetlight behind him cast his shadow across the gallery floor. His dark suit clung to him, sculpted perfectly to his broad frame. His jawline sharp, hair slicked back, and eyes calm, calculating. Ice-blue. Evelyn had seen him once before, in a newspaper article. Julian Maddox, tech tycoon, investor, rumored billionaire, and the youngest CEO to ever take a company public before age 30. But why was he in her studio? "You're Evelyn Carter?" he asked, his voice smooth but commanding. She nodded, confused. "Do I know you?" He stepped closer, surveying the empty studio. "I'm not here for art, I'm here for a deal." "Excuse me, I know you're about to be evicted. I know your gallery is weeks from shutting down, and I know you turned down my offer to buy this place last month." Her chest tightened. "That was you," Julian nodded. "You told my assistant you didn't want to sell your soul." He let the words hang in the air, amused. "So, what now?" He came to rub it in. "No," he said calmly. "I came to offer you a second chance." Evelyn folded her arms. "And why would a billionaire care about saving my studio?" He met her eyes with piercing clarity. "Because I need you. Just for 3 days." She blinked. What? He took out a sleek leather folder and placed it on her desk. Inside was a contract. Her name was already printed on the dotted line. "I need a fiancé. A believable one. For my grandfather's estate transfer to go through, I need to show him I've settled down. If I don't, I lose control of my company." "You want me to pretend to be your fiancé?" she asked, stunned. "Yes. You'll accompany me to a private family retreat this weekend. We'll stay in my home the night before, and then act the part until Sunday night." Her jaw dropped. "And the catch?" He didn't blink. "You'll stay in my penthouse the night before. My grandfather is old-fashioned. He believes spending that one night together symbolizes commitment. Superstition." "Really? Wait, Evelyn said, backing up. "You want me to move in with a stranger, pretend to be in love, and sleep under the same roof? For money?" "No," Julian replied coolly. "Not for money. For freedom. Sign the contract, and I'll pay off every debt you owe. I'll save your gallery. I'll even commission your next exhibition. No strings, just appearances." Evelyn laughed bitterly. "And you think I'll say yes because I'm desperate?" He tilted his head. "No, I think you'll say yes because you're smart, and because I'm offering you a way out." She stared at the man across from her, a stranger, powerful, dangerous, calculating, yet somehow he looked sincere, or at least determined. "And what if I say no?" Julian's expression didn't change. "Then I walk out, and this place becomes a parking lot next month." Evelyn stared at the rain running down the windows, at the painting her mother had gifted her before she died, at the dream she'd built with blood and tears, took a deep breath. "If I say yes, I set boundaries. Of course, separate bedrooms, no touching, no lies beyond the script." Julian gave a small, respectful nod. "Deal. And after 3 days, I walk away." He stepped forward and extended his hand. "With your freedom intact." She shook his hand and sealed her fate. The driver opened the sleek black door of the town car, and Evelyn paused, her fingers tightening around the handle of her worn leather satchel. The building before her rose into the clouds, glass, steel, and perfection. Julian Maddox's penthouse was at the top. Just one night. That's what she kept telling herself. The doorman nodded, as if expecting her. Of course he was. Julian, probably, orchestrated every second of this moment, down to the expression on the man's face. As the elevator doors slid open, Evelyn stepped into a capsule lined with mirrors and gold trim. It moved silently but swiftly, her stomach rising with emotion. Floor after floor blinked past. With each level, her doubts grew louder. What was she doing? Agreeing to stay in a stranger's penthouse, playing pretend fiancé to a man who oozed power and control. She didn't belong in this world. When the doors opened, soft light spilled into the elevator. She stepped out into silence. But not the cold kind. No. This place felt still, like the world had paused. The floor was warm beneath her feet, marble that felt like butter. To her right was a wall of glass, revealing the city skyline as it flickered beneath the falling dusk. To her left, a soft rustle of movement. Julian stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, pouring 2 glasses of water. No wine, no champagne, just water. You came, he said, placing a glass on the counter. I signed the contract, didn't I? He studied her with unreadable eyes. You could have backed out. I almost did, she admitted, twice. Julian smirked faintly. I admire your honesty. Evelyn looked round. Is this all for show too? The skyline? The quiet music? The carefully lit candles on the table? I live here, he replied. But I admit I made it a little warmer. You looked cold when I last saw you. She didn't respond. Instead, she wandered toward a painting hanging on the far wall. It was abstract, yet oddly emotional. Not the kind of art she expected from a man like him. You painted this? She asked. Julian blinked, surprised. You can tell. I feel it, she said simply. There was a silence then, soft and thick, and it wasn't uncomfortable. Dinner was already prepared, nothing extravagant. Roasted vegetables, fresh bread, lemon, herb, chicken. Simple, unexpected. They sat in the dining area facing the skyline. Evelyn avoided looking at the large master bedroom, visible through the cracked door behind him. He noticed there are 2 rooms prepared. He said quietly, yours is down the hall. You'll have privacy, I promise. I appreciate that, she replied. Midway through dinner, he asked the question, why did you really say yes? Evelyn didn't answer immediately. She looked down at her fork, then up at the twinkling city. Because I've been trying to survive for so long, I forgot what it feels like to be free. Julian said nothing, but something changed in his posture, a stiffness replaced by understanding. And you? She asked. Why me? He hesitated, then answered with a weight she hadn't expected. Because I'm tired of lies. You're painfully honest. And because for some reason, I believed you'd still look me in the eye after reading the fine print. Her chest tightened. She hadn't expected that either. Later that night, after he showed her to the guest room, Evelyn stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the lights flicker below. Her fingers brushed the cool glass as if trying to touch the city. Somewhere down there, the old version of her was breaking apart. Then came a soft knock. She turned. Julian stood in the doorway, holding something wrapped in brown paper. I found this in storage, he said. Thought you might want to see it. She unwrapped the parcel carefully. It was an old art journal, pages filled with fading sketches. Her sketches from college, from a decade ago. How I bought your portfolio anonymously during a student auction years ago, he said. He didn't know it was you until recently. Her throat tightened. You kept it. He nodded once. Because one day, I knew the world would need to see what you see. He left her then, with that book in her hands, and closed the door gently behind him. And for the first time in months, Evelyn didn't feel like a prisoner of her choices. She felt like maybe, just maybe, this night wasn't a trap. It was the beginning of something unexpected, something real. The knock at the door came before sunrise. Evelyn hadn't slept. She'd spent most of the night staring at the old sketches Julian had given her, flipping through the pages like they were windows into a life she had forgotten how to live. Seeing those lines imperfect, raw, but full of wonder had stirred something in her that the bill's distress, the hopelessness, had buried. She pulled on a robe and opened the door cautiously. Julian stood there, not in a suit, not polished or commanding like usual. He wore joggers and a plain black t-shirt. His hair was slightly tousled for the first time. He looked human. I didn't mean to wake you, he said. You didn't, she replied. What's going on? There's a press photographer already outside the building. Word got out I might be engaged. We need to rehearse. Evelyn blinked. Rehearse our story, he said simply. Where we met. How long we've been together. What your favorite flower is. You know, the things people in love usually know. She exhaled slowly. Right. This wasn't real. but it had to feel real. They sat across from each other in the soft morning light of the penthouse lounge. The windows steamed slightly from the warmth inside, and the sun rising behind the skyline painted the walls in gold and amber. Evelyn scribbled notes in a small journal Julian handed her. It had the initials JM engraved in the corner. Details, consistency, conviction. "You're allergic to strawberries," he said. "Since when?" She asked. "Since college," he replied, tapping her notes. "You hated the chocolate-covered ones at our first gala together." She looked up. "That never happened." "It did now," he said with a small smile. "Remember, you're supposed to adore my grandmother, and I proposed in Paris." "Paris," she repeated, "because nothing says honesty like a fake proposal in a city I've never been to. You're catching on." There was a strange rhythm developing between them. Witty jabs, careful smiles. Something about Julian was shifting. Less ice, more quiet fire. Like he'd spent years building walls and only recently started checking for cracks. By mid-morning they were walking through the private garage to his waiting car. Evelyn wore a soft lavender dress he'd had delivered the night before. It fit perfectly. She hated that. Hated how easy it was to sink into the illusion. The Maddox estate sat just outside the city, a sprawling property lined with ancient trees and a stone fountain that hadn't run dry in 100 years. Evelyn stepped out of the car and immediately felt eyes on her. Security guards, staff, a photographer lingering near the gate. All silent witnesses to the moment. Julian extended his hand to her. She hesitated. Just a second too long, but then took it. He leaned close and whispered, "You're doing fine." Inside the mansion, everything smelled like old wood, roses, and prestige. The kind of wealth that had been passed down through generations like stories. His grandmother's voice echoed through the corridor before she appeared as a woman with eyes sharper than any blade Evelyn had faced in her life. "So this is her," she said. "Not unkind, not warm either." Julian squeezed Evelyn's hand gently. "Yes, Gran, this is Evelyn." The older woman gave her a long look, then nodded. "You're prettier than I expected," she said, "and you're much more intimidating than I was prepared for," Evelyn replied, before she could stop herself. There was a pause, then unexpectedly laughter. Julian single quotes his grandmother clapped once. "She's real good. I'm too old for actresses." Evelyn breathed again. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of introductions, polite nods, and old money traditions Evelyn tried desperately not to trip over. They sat beside each other at a long oak dining table, while family members exchanged shallow pleasantries. But Julian never once let go of her hand. Later that evening, as the sky turned deep blue and the stars began to pierce through, Evelyn found herself standing alone on the back terrace. She needed airspace, a moment to remember who she was outside of this lie. Julian joined her, 2 mugs of tea in his hands. "You held your own," he said. "She terrifies me," Evelyn admitted. "But in a weirdly noble way. She terrifies everyone," he said with a chuckle. There was silence again. "That comfortable kind. I didn't expect this to feel so natural," she said quietly. Julian looked out over the grounds. "Neither did I." She glanced at him, then looked away quickly. There was a softness in his expression that hadn't been there before. Something genuine, vulnerable, even. "This was supposed to be a business deal," she whispered. "But it doesn't feel like that anymore." Julian turned to face her, the light from the lantern casting soft shadows across his face. "It's not just business," he said, his voice low. She searched his eyes, and for the first time, she realized something terrifying and beautiful all at once. They were pretending, but the feelings, they were starting to feel real. "You kissed me." Evelyn's voice barely rose above a whisper, but it cracked the stillness of the hallway like thunder. She hadn't meant to say it, aloud, not here. Not now, but the moment had replayed in her mind too many times since dinner. The gentle clink of champagne glasses, the toast from Julian's uncle, the way everyone leaned forward, waiting to see if the newly engaged couple would seal it with a kiss. She'd expected a staged moment, a whisper between them, a polite peck, but Julian had leaned in calm, unhurried and kissed her like it wasn't pretend at all. Now they stood outside the grand library, the estate quieting as the family dispersed into private quarters. Julian looked at her eyes unreadable, as if he wasn't sure if she was accusing him or inviting the truth. "I had to make it believable," he said, his voice even. "It didn't feel like make-believe," she replied, her gaze fixed on the worn, wooden floor. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, it wasn't with charm or calculation. It was honest. It didn't feel fake to me either. She looked up, startled by the confession. For a second, they both stood suspended in the truth neither had planned to admit. Julian turned away first. "Come on," he said softly. "There's something I want to show you." She followed him down a narrower hallway that curved toward a part of the estate she hadn't seen yet. It felt older, less polished. Dust lingered in the corners, and portraits lined the walls, faces from generations long gone. They stopped at a locked door. Julian produced a small key from his pocket and turned it slowly. The room smelled like cedar and thyme. It was a studio, paintings, easels, and sketchbooks piled neatly along the far wall. Sunlight from a high arched window revealed a massive canvas still in progress, and in the center of the room, a painting she recognized. "That's mine," she said, stepping closer. "That's one of my earliest." Julian nodded. "Your mother gave it to my grandfather." She said it reminded him of someone he once loved. Evelyn felt her chest rise sharply. "You knew my mother?" "No," he said, "but my grandfather did. A long time ago, before he met my grandmother. It didn't work out, but he always said she was the only one who truly understood what mattered." She touched the corner of the frame. Her mother had always been mysterious about her past. This was something she never expected to find here. "I wanted to show you this because I figured you had the right to know," Julian said, "and because I think your art deserves more than silence." The air between them changed. Again, that there was no mansion, no contract, no cameras, just Evelyn, standing inches from a man she barely knew, but who had handed her pieces of her past, pieces of herself, with no expectation in return. "I don't know what this is," she said honestly. "This arrangement, this whatever is happening between us, but it's no longer just a performance." Julian nodded slowly. "Then maybe we stop performing." She looked at him, uncertain. "And start what?" "Start figuring out what's real." Later that night, Evelyn lay in her guest bed, staring at the ceiling. Her heart raced in a rhythm. She didn't recognize not fear, not panic, something else. Hope, maybe, or confusion disguised as it. She heard a soft tap on the door, not firm, not demanding. She got up and opened it slowly. Julian stood there in pajama pants and a plain gray t-shirt, barefoot, holding a small black and white photograph. "It's her," he said. "Your mom, with my grandfather. I found it tonight." Evelyn took the photo in her hands and sat on the bed. Two young people, laughing, wild-eyed, barefoot on a beach. Her mother looked happy in a way Evelyn had only seen in dreams. She was fierce, Julian added. "Like you, quiet, but powerful." "I used to think I had to be loud to be heard," Evelyn said. "Now I think maybe I just needed someone to listen." He sat beside her, close but respectful. They said nothing for a while, but the silence was different. This time, it wasn't distance. It was trust growing in the spaces between words. And as she looked over at him, something in her knew something impossible and fragile. This man, this stranger who'd barged into her life with contracts and confidence, might just be the one person who saw her, not for what she was pretending to be, but for who she'd buried underneath survival. For the first time, she wondered, what if this started as a lie, but ends as the truth? What were you thinking? Julian, the voice came sharp, urgent, and louder than the soft rustling of breakfast being served downstairs. Evelyn froze just beyond the staircase, her hand hovering over the railing. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the tone in that voice stopped her cold. She peeked around the corner just in time to see Julian standing in his grandfather's study, facing an older man in a tailored charcoal suit, tall, silver-templed, and furious. The doors were half open. Neither noticed her. "She's not one of us," the man said. "You bring home a girl with no pedigree, no connections, and you expect the board to approve the inheritance transfer. It's not up to them," Julian replied, calm but firm. "It's grandmother's condition, not theirs." The man stepped closer. "You think playing house with a struggling artist is enough to prove you're stable? You think this is love?" "I never said it was love," Julian said. Evelyn's chest tightened. The silence that followed stung more than any slap. "I said it was honest," Julian added softly. For once, the older man scoffed. "Honest. You paid off her debts, dressed her up, and brought her here like she was part of the family. How long do you think this fantasy will hold?" Evelyn backed away, her breath shallow. She didn't hear the rest. She didn't want to. She slipped outside before anyone could see her. The estate garden was quiet in the early light. Bees buzzed around hydrangeas. A fountain whispered softly behind a wall of lavender. Everything looked perfect, still, but inside her, everything had cracked. She thought of the kiss, of the tea on the terrace, of the art studio, of Julian's voice when he'd said, "It's not just business." She thought of last night, of the photograph of her mother, of the moment they sat side by side, not as pretenders, but as two people trying to figure out where truth started and performance ended. She had almost believed it. Almost, she whispered bitterly. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text. Unknown number. "I know who he really is. And I know what he's hiding. If you care about the truth, meet me at the coffee shop on Linden Street. Alone." Noon. Her fingers trembled as she read it again. She didn't recognize the number, but something told her this wasn't a prank. Later that morning, she returned to the house and dressed carefully. Nothing too formal, just enough to blend in and not raise suspicion. Julian was on the phone near the library, speaking in low tones. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't leave a note. She just walked out and found her way to Linden Street. The coffee shop was quiet, tucked between a bookstore and a tailor's shop, the kind of place where conversations went unnoticed. She took a seat near the window and waited. At exactly noon, a woman in her mid-30s stepped in, sunglasses still on, lips pursed tightly. She scanned the room, then walked over to Evelyn's table. "You're Evelyn Carter?" "Yes." The woman sat without asking, pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. "Julian Maddox isn't what you think. He's not just a CEO, not just the heir. He's been hiding something that could ruin your life if you're not careful." Evelyn opened the folder. Photos, reports, old articles, a whisper of scandal buried under polished headlines, a lawsuit that vanished, a woman who disappeared, a closed-door settlement. She looked up, her voice shaking. "What is this?" "His past," the woman replied, "and possibly your future, unless you walk away now." Evelyn stared at the papers. None of it felt real, none of it aligned with the man who'd handed her a piece of her mother's story, the man who stood beside her in silence and comforted her with truth. And yet, doubt crawled up her spine like frost. After the woman left, Evelyn stayed in the shop for another hour, trying to breathe, trying to think. She returned to the estate as the sun dipped low in the sky. Julian met her at the door, relief washing over his features when he saw her. "Where were you?" he asked. "I needed air," she replied. He studied her carefully. "You've been crying." "I saw something today," she said quietly. "Something about you." Julian's expression changed instantly. "Evelyn, don't," she cut in. "Just tell me the truth, all of it, because if I find out you've been lying to Miff, this was all some game, then I walk. Right now, contract or not." He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, something inside him broke open. "There are things I haven't told you," he said, "not because I wanted to lie, but because I've spent most of my life being protected by silence. From a mistake I made when I was younger," Julian said. "A mistake that cost someone her reputation and nearly cost me my company. I paid the price, legally, quietly. My family covered the rest." Evelyn's pulse pounded in her ears. "But I never hurt her," he said. "That part of the story was twisted. She and we were both reckless. But I didn't lie to you, Evelyn. Not once. Since this began." She didn't speak. Couldn't he stepped closer? "I know this started as an arrangement. I know we were pretending, but somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending. I don't know when it happened, but it did. And if you don't believe me, I won't stop you from leaving." Tears burned behind her eyes. "You should have told me," she whispered. "I know." Silence filled the space between them. Pain, hesitation, longing, and something else. The possibility that even broken truths could lead to something real. If both hearts were willing to face the pieces. "I didn't come back for the contract," Evelyn said, her voice steady even as her hands trembled at her sides. "I came back for clarity." Julian didn't move. He stood across from her in the grand music room, framed by tall windows that bled golden light onto the polished floor. The air between them was no longer cold but charged, like something unspoken was finally about to break free. "What you told me last night," she continued, "it wasn't easy to hear, but it was real, and I'm tired of running from real." Julian stepped forward, slowly, cautiously, not like a man used to getting everything he wanted, but like someone afraid to lose the one thing that finally mattered. "I know I should have told you from the start," he said, But every time I tried, I saw how much you were learning to breathe again. I didn't want to be the one to take that away from you." Evelyn looked at him, eyes soft but searching. "You weren't." He blinked, caught off guard. "You didn't take my breath away, Julian," she said. "You gave it back." The words settled between them like light snow, quiet, honest, unmistakable. The door creaked behind them, and Julian's grandmother stepped in. She had a photo in her hands, an old one, worn and yellowed. She said nothing, just held it out to Evelyn. Evelyn took it gently. It was her mother, younger, freer, standing barefoot in the very same garden just outside the estate, beside her grandfather, holding her hand with a tenderness that couldn't be staged. "I kept this hidden for years," the older woman said softly. "Jealousy is a foolish thing. I didn't understand then that some people come into your life not to stay, but to awaken something." She looked at Evelyn with tired but kind eyes. "You remind me of her, fierce but good." She loved fiercely too, maybe too much. Evelyn swallowed the lump in her throat. "I can't stop what's coming," the woman added. "The board will challenge your engagement. Your past will be questioned. But if you walk away now, they win. Not because of what happened before, but because of what they're afraid you'll build now." Julian stepped forward, his voice slow. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying don't run. Not from her. Not from this." Then, with a slow smile that held decades of wisdom, she turned and left them alone. Evelyn didn't need time to think. She looked at Julian and asked, "Is this still a contract to you?" "No," he said immediately. "Not for a long time." She took his hand. "Then let's stop pretending we're something we're not." Tanned finally becomes something real. The next day, the press flooded in for what they believed was a staged engagement celebration. Photographers, whispers, sharp eyes from across crystal glasses. The Maddox estate hadn't seen this much buzz since Julian's father took over the company. But the couple everyone watched didn't play their parts. They didn't pretend. They didn't pose. They stood side by side together, quiet, grounded, in something far stronger than performance. When the microphone was handed to Julian for the formal announcement, he took it but didn't speak right away. He looked at Evelyn and smiled like she was the only thing in the room worth seeing. Then, he said, "Most of you came expecting a show, a story, something polished, something clever. But what you're looking at is a decision, a promise, not one that was bought, not one that was borrowed, but one that was built over fear, over pride, and through truth." He turned slightly toward her. "I started this for the wrong reason. I needed an image, a rescue. But she gave me something I didn't know I'd lost myself." Gasps echoed quietly. Julian continued, softer now. "This woman stood beside me when she didn't have to. She saw every crack and didn't run. And I'd rather rebuild everything I own brick by brick than risk losing her." He handed the mic back. The applause started slow, then grew. Not everyone clapped, but those who mattered did. Later, back in the garden where the photo had once been taken decades earlier, Evelyn leaned her head on Julian's shoulder. "You really think we can make it work?" she asked. "I don't think," he said. "I believe." She closed her eyes, feeling the last of her old life fall away like petals in the wind. She'd come into this as a woman buried in debt, broken by loss, drowning in doubt. She was leaving it as something entirely different, not just someone who had found love, but someone who had reclaimed her voice. And as the sun dipped below the trees, casting golden light through the branches, one truth remained undeniable. She had been forced into a night she never wanted, but it became the beginning of everything she never knew she needed.